Buddhist science is a study on Buddhism based on facts and science.
The Truths of the World, Nature. By Venerable Rungruan Papartsaro, Dr. Rungruan Lim Chupatipa. In Buddhism, the word Dharma is rooted from the word nature. After the Buddha enlightenment, when the Buddha began his teachings about the truths of nature, the Buddha used the word Dharma as nature for his teachings. Since then the word Dharma means the Buddha's teachings. For this reason, in principle the Buddha's words are referred to as Dharma and sharing the same meaning as the truths about the nature as well. The Buddha explained that his teachings are not about miracles including the contents and the way to gain the knowledge, but they are about the truths that already exist in nature. The Buddha just reveals all the truths of nature to public. In Buddhism, the nature is the world where all beings, no matter with form or formless, are living together. So, the world is an ecosystem of all living things under a same law of nature. And typically, in studying the truths of life within nature, we will divide the studying into two parts. First, it is the part of the world as an overall landscape where we live in, and secondly, it is a life as an individual being, especially the mind, in another part. And finally, we will study on the ecosystem of the interactions among all being within a system and determining on how we can respond to the world rightly as an ultimate accomplishment of the Buddhist study. While most religions may proclaim that their teachings are words from gods, and if people follow the words, then the gods will promise something like a heaven for a reward, otherwise going to hell. However, in Buddhism the Buddha's teachings are just only the truths of nature, something that already exists in nature, and everyone can discover and learn how to make uses of them in life. And specifically, either heaven or hell is just a state of mind with happiness or suffering. Everyone can go to heaven or hell depending on what they have done. Therefore, the duty of a Buddhist is to study the truths of nature correctly. In Buddhism, since the Buddha is not a personal god, therefore the Buddha was not concerned about who was a creator, a god, or any supernatural figures. The Buddha was interested only about what the nature was, and how humans should do rightly to live together in peace. The topics about the truths of nature can be summarized as follows.
1. What is the nature? If we are not going to have a blind belief, so we have to look at the world from a new perspective, as a system of nature. So, we have to define specifically what the world, or the nature is. 2. The reality of element. The definition of element in Buddhism is the property of nature that already exists in nature, not being created or assumed by anyone. 3. The description of nature in terms of process and state. Once the nature is defined, next is how we can describe the nature in generic terms. Especially when we observe the nature, what do we see? 4. The law of cause and effect. After observing the nature, then collecting all the data for analyzing and connecting dots, to find out the relationships of every component and every phenomenon in terms of causes and effects. And finally we can induce the truths of nature as a universal law of nature called the law of cause and effect. 5. The law of karma. After having a clear understanding of the law of nature, then applying the law of cause and effect to the description of life. 6. The 3 common characteristics of nature. Finally, we will summarize the characteristics of nature into 3 common terms, that is, everything is impermanent, deteriorating, and every phenomenon is no self.
In Buddhist wisdom development, by having mindfulness observation on the world, we will develop a right perception of the world, that everything and every phenomenon in the world are impermanent, deteriorating, and no self. Typically, when receiving stimulus from the world, then by having the knowledge of the truths of the world, whatsoever that we sense the world, what we feel is nothing but stimulus from the world, for which these external objects of consciousness are impermanent, deteriorating, and no self. And then by realizing the truths of the nature, then the mind will not bother with the world, and become less and less craving onto the world, and as an immediate result the mind will not feel too excited with what happen in the world anymore, so that the mind will release all the objects of consciousness which are contaminated with defilements during the mental formations of dependent origination, and then the mind will be calm and relaxing in peace. This is called a wisdom to eliminate arising defilements at the craving within the process of dependent origination.